We're now going to move back to, we were on item number 16. We're going to go to the action item of board agenda item number 15.
Okay. I have the motion if you want.
We were working on,
Diligently.
we had a, what is that?
We were working diligently on it.
Okay, we're back. We had a report from Vice Chair Warner. We were starting on a motion, and we cleaned the motion up. So
Right.
would like to recognize Board Member Hanson.
The licensing task force moves that the board directs staff to seek statutory changes to allow the board to implement a 3-tier licensing structure consistent with task force research and findings, and that rule recommendations to support the new licensing structure be brought to law and licensing starting in November. I just pass that to Mark.
We have a motion and a second. We're going to discussion. Board Member Lear.
I wondered, having been on that task force, if you would accept an amendment that would say seek legislation only as necessary.
Okay. Okay, we have an amendment to the motion to seek.
It started out to seek legislation, didn't it, Linda? Only, and I'm asking to add only as necessary. Only as necessary. So that the legislative changes would be as minimal as possible and leave us maximum amount of flexibility, only as necessary.
Seek statutory changes only as
necessary.
Oh, right there.
I'm
I
sorry.
thought you were going to
No wonder you were confused.
Okay. All right.
I confused you.
Okay, we have
Sorry.
an amendment to the motion to add only as necessary after to seek statutory changes.
Right.
Okay. The amendment is to add something, but I'm going to repeat the whole thing with that in it. The licensing task force moves that the board direct staff to seek statutory changes, this is the amendment, only as necessary, to allow the board to implement a 3-tier licensing structure consistent with task force research and findings, and that the rule recommendations to support the new licensing structure be brought to law and licensing starting in November.
Second.
Okay, so the amendment was to add only as necessary. So we have the amendment. We have a second. Any further discussion on the amendment? Seeing none, let's vote. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Voting was unanimous. Now back to the original motion, and I will read it. Oh, Brittany.
I would like to make an amendment. I move that, and I don't have the motion in front of me, so I don't know exactly where to put it in.
You will in a minute.
Okay.
Just pass it around.
So that we say, so currently it says to allow the board to implement a 3-tier licensing structure. I would like to insert for both teachers and school leaders consistent with the task force research and findings.
Will you write your amendment? So will you repeat that again?
Yeah. So I would like to insert in there that basically that these changes would apply, this look at would apply for both teacher licensing and school leader licensing. So it would be so that to seek statutory changes only as necessary to allow the board to implement a 3-tier licensing structure for both teachers and school leaders consistent with task force research and findings.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? I think that light was from her previous. Okay, let's vote on the, seeing none, let's vote on the amendment.
I have
We're
a
going to,
question. Can
Okay.
I ask a question about the amendment? Just a clarifying question about the amendment?
regarding the amendment, yes.
Right. Brittany, are you intending, when you say school leaders, did you intentionally choose that word rather than administrators?
Yes, I didn't want to use a word that would complicated or overreach or whatever. And so it's similar to what we're looking at for the motion for the teacher license, that school leader license. I didn't want to pinpoint it too carefully to allow enough flexibility to have the discussion as far as that school leader place. So whether it's a administrative position, so it would be
I just don't want to be confusing.
principal.
Yeah, I just
Yeah,
don't want
and
to
so
be
we
confusing.
can change it to an administrator, whatever, if that's more applicable, so.
Okay, any further discussion on the amendment? I'll repeat the amendment. Okay, I'm going to read the motion with the amendment in it, and I'll call out the amendment. The licensing task force moves that the board direct staff to seek statutory changes only as necessary to allow the board to implement a three-tier licensing structure. Here's the amendment for both teacher and school leader. Amendment ends, and the rest of it goes. Consistent with task force research and findings, and that the rule recommendations to support the new licensing structure be brought to law and licensing starting in November. I see a light on. Is someone going to speak to the motion? Okay. To the amendment, to the motion? Board Member Lear.
I'm sorry, I think we need one more amendment, and maybe this is something Brittany would accept. Instead of teachers, could it say educators? So that it would take in counselors?
We have to amend
Yeah.
the amendment.
But that is something that you would intend, or no?
I'm going to find my pen.
No, what she's thinking for a minute. Don't rush up here.
I'm not going to make you write it. Okay,
But they are
so
teacher, they're educators.
Board Member
Yeah, I know, but that's fine. But you still want the
Board-
license.
Angie, hey, Angie, will you assist here just for a second? We're just
She
dealing
did.
with some language.
She did.
And I think we're not really struggling, but we have an amendment to the motion. And now we're having an amendment to the amendment. And here's the script that I'm reading.
If you feel-
Yes, so the idea is to just change for both educators and school leaders.
Okay.
So instead
So
of-
the amendment, okay, I think I can do that. So the amendment to the amendment
replace teacher.
is to replace, instead of saying for both teacher and school leader, to say for both
Educators and school.
educators? Are you saying, 'cause I want
And
to be,
school leaders.
Yes.
so it'll say what?
So yeah, just teach, instead of
You could
teacher,
just do
it's,
educators,
but we want to plural it too.
School
make it
leader,
plural
yeah.
For both educators and school leaders.
Okay, got it.
School leaders in there, it doesn't hurt. Especially.
Okay. So instead of saying for both teacher and school leaders, it'll say for both educators, plural, and school leaders. Okay, that's the amendment to the amendment. Not seeing any discussion, let's vote on the amendment to the amendment. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Those opposed? Okay, voting was unanimous. Now to the amendment. I'll restate this so we have clarity. Not that I like to hear my voice over this. Okay, the licensing task force moves that the board direct staff to seek statutory changes only as necessary to allow the board to implement a three-tier licensing structure for both, okay, here's the amendment, for both educators and school leaders, a three-tier licensing structure, or no, let's say leaders, consistent with task force research and findings, and that the rule recommendations to support the new licensing structure be brought to law and licensing starting in November. Okay, let's vote on the amendment. All in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed? Voting was unanimous. Now we're going to say it again because now it's amended. So the amended motion states this: the licensing task force moves that the board directs, or do I need to read it? Do we have it good enough? Okay, I don't want to read it. Okay. Not seeing any other discussion. I do now, Board Member Cannon.
Okay, so now we're to the discussion on the
Original
motion.
motion.
Yes. So I have not been on this task force that's examined educator licensing in Utah. I am not really knowledgeable about the three-tier licensing structure or the task force research and findings. And so I feel like I'm being a bit blindsided that we are taking action on this. And I'm assuming that other members of the board who haven't been on the task force may be similarly in the dark.
Okay, I can respond. We actually have done 2 presentations this year. And one was just last month, where it's breaking it up into an associate permit and a professional educator, as well as an LEA-specific license. I've done it.
Yeah, instead of 1, 2, and 3. You're replacing levels 1, 2, and 3.
Right, and what we're doing is we're incorporating all of the various tracks of licensure into these. Right now, we have a multiple number of ways to become a teacher. So, for example, you have APT, you have ARL, you have letter of extended eminence, and all these different ways. And what it is combining all of those into one license. And then it will be up to the non-licensing committee to work with parents and educators and various stakeholders to determine what the specific requirements are going to be to go into the associate permit, and then what would go from the associate permit into that professional educator license. So it's just combining all of those different licenses and putting them into one.
Okay, well, that helps. I must have just been on the turnip truck when this was all coming before us.
Well, it was pretty in-depth. We had it up on the screen, and it talked about the 3 groups, but it's still got to come out of law and licensing. Any further? Oh. Okay, seeing none, let's vote on the motion. All in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed? Okay, voting was unanimous. Okay, we're moving right along. We're going to get to our committee reports, but just want to recognize a few things. We are going to be losing some board members and staff between now and 5 o'clock. So before, as they leave, thank you and appreciate all that they've done. I understand they have schedules, and I know a bunch of us have an appointment with that Teacher of the Year thing, so that's really a good thing I'm hoping to get to. So we're going to try to end as soon as we can here. So we're going to move right along. So we're going to go to our audit committee reports. I'm going to change this up. Well, no, we don't have to change it up. We'll get started here. I'm going to do let's go to audit. Audit first. Are you ready, Tara?
Oh, yes, I am. I'm trying to figure out what time this starts. 6. Okay.
Okay, I think you have one action item,
Yes.
if I remember right, and it's in our board docs that, I've lost my board docs.
Okay. I just would like to, let's see, where is it?